Is There More is the podcast where creators share how their darkest moments became the breakthroughs that changed everything. We're building a space for raw stories, deep connection, and real hope for everyone who's still writing their story. Brought to you by Dialogue Life Skills, the world's scalable solution to the teen and young adult mental health crisis. I'm your host, Megan A. Tully, and I'm listening.
Fear takes us out of our bodies. When we are calm, we're grounded. In our bodies, we're feeling, we're able to adjust and adapt because we're paying attention to what's happening around us because we're fully in the moment. But once we get a certain level of fear, we dissociate a little bit. Yes. And we go to our most primal kind of the parts of us. Do I fight it or do I fight it? Right? Yeah. We go kind of back to that rudimentary part of us. And when it comes to things like AI, it has gotten people in that very fearful state. You don't have to hate yourself because you're not where you want to be. You can love yourself, accept yourself, and also say, and I also want to be better at this. Talk to yourself like you would talk to a 5-year-old. So if a 5-year-old did that thing that you just did, would you cuss them out? You better not. Not in front of me. You would be like, oh, kid, I get it. Oh, it's hard to do that. Life's not always easy. Oh, let me hug you. We've got to learn to talk to ourselves that way because life can be difficult enough without beating yourself up.
So you were 5 years old. You drove your friend's tricycle into a pool because you thought it was
badass,
solid ground. You could swim, which is great, but the tricycle couldn't. It sunk to the bottom. And because you were so scared that your friend was going to be mad, I guess, that her tricycle was rusting at the bottom of the pool, you decided you needed to save the tricycle and not necessarily yourself first. Is there more to that?
I think that was kind of my original trauma. The idea. And it kind of makes sense to me when I think about how I hold my breath when I'm stressed.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's kind of a moment correlating to that.
This is part 2 of my conversation with Dr. Ali, where we go even deeper. Take what hits, leave what doesn't. Let's go. You've gone from birth to you skyrocketed. You did everything. You became a doctor. You went through 12 years of school, or however many when you add it all up. You went into media. You got on all these big shows. You even had your own show with 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗿, which is crazy. And now you're writing a book. Is there anything where you're like, ooh, I want more of this, or I'm searching for...
I think so. I want to I've been on a spiritual journey these past few years, these past 5 years. My whole life I've been on a spiritual journey.
What does spiritual journey mean to you?
So I've deconstructed from Christianity quite a long time ago. Okay. And now I've been trying to settle into who I am. And I think you really articulated it really well earlier. I am a very cognitive person. And it has been harder for me recently to connect spiritually to myself, right? Recently meaning the past 12, 15 years. Yeah. And so I have been reconnecting. And so I've been on a really beautiful journey in that space. And I think I want to take some trips, travel a little bit to some places where I can connect. Thailand. I've been Buddhist for about 15 years now. Thailand. And so I think that's kind of my next stage. It's let me see what evolves spiritually. So we might get another book in a few more years about that. We'll see.
Yeah, that would be cool. Eat, Pray, Love. It's your version of Eat, Pray, Love.
Exactly.
Okay, hold on now. So you've been Buddhist for about 15 years, and you said you've been having a harder time connecting to your spirit or spirituality for about 15 years.
It's been growing, right? It's been growing, but I feel like you were saying, historically, I've been a little bit more cognitive, a little bit more oh, let me read this, let me understand this, my head knowledge. And so I've been stretching for a period of time into a body knowledge, a spiritual knowledge. How do I sit in my intuition, right? There was a whole year or 2 years that me and my therapist, all we did was work on improving my intuition. And what does it feel like to make a good decision? What does it feel like when you're, with someone and they're asking you to do something and you don't want to do it? How do you signal to yourself? And so that's been a big journey for me. And I'm finally starting to feel kind of comfortable with it. But let's be real, it's constantly a growth process. You're never really there, right? Because there's no there. There's no destination when it comes to things like that. You just are constantly kind of feeling, experiencing, and living. And so, I definitely feel like that's kind of where I'm headed next. And then the old basic ones kids, I guess. I don't know. I'm 1 million years old, so we'll see.
Okay. Right.
We'll see if that happens. Oh, I am.
Wait, are you married right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you have a whole relationship
I have a
going
whole
on.
guy. He's like downstairs, literally. He's just
What?
like downstairs living his whole life.
Oh, I'm like, bring him up. What does he do?
He's an engineer. He's an electrical
Which I
engineer.
Okay.
Electrical, but he's been working in software for probably past 15, 20 years, and he builds apps and codes, does LLMs. So now he's
Wow.
like in the AI LLM space.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Okay,
he's
I'm glad he's moving into AI because of AI. That's a great skill set to have.
it's insane. And with the expansion, because I also love technology, but what we're seeing with this expansion in AI and the ways in which it's able to like code, for example, right? About 2 years ago, the main thing was, oh, everyone has to go to school to be, to learn to build software and to code and to, Ruby on Rails and HTML and Java. You had to do all, speak all these languages. And now, especially after DeepSeek, so DeepSeek
Huh.
was the
Yeah.
AI that came out of China. After DeepSeek dropped, it's like, oh, wait, you can actually really use AI to build AI, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
can teach you so much. And so obviously he speaks all those coding languages and has a lot of proficiency with AI. So he's like,
So are y'all working on something together? Because you said you love technology too,
we are. We
right?
actually are. We
No
are.
way.
I have a platform that I'm going to be um, presenting soon. I'll say, everyone get ready. But presenting, I like to tip my
Drum
fingers.
roll.
Montgomery Burns, really, really excellent. I don't know why I do that so much. I think there definitely will be something soon. And I'm also being conscientious. So I think a lot of people are genuinely anxious of
Hmm.
this AI space that we're getting ready to enter and how it's going to shift the landscape.
Yeah. Well, it already is, but I always talk about like, dude, nobody should be sitting at a machine putting freaking toothpaste caps on bottles or like nobody should be, if you don't need to, like, I mean, I know truck drivers, they love it, but like operating like machinery or nobody should be like sitting at I mean, yeah, I don't know, sitting at a computer, like staring at a screen all day in a dark room every day or in a freaking Amazon warehouse is the worst. So I just see like, I don't know. I see the bright side of everything. I'm like, dude, we get to create now, and you got to do what you really love because it's all going to be taken away. Or, of course, if you're really amazing at AI, you get to use AI to still do your same job. But I don't know. I see a positive side of it. And like we said earlier about the media basically planting fear in us, or like when we even go back to like racism, like for example, like my parents, like white people's parents planting fear about black people or any other colored people or whatever in us. So, oh, I had a bad experience one time. It's like, okay. And like,
Yeah,
or
but
the media being like, oh, AI is going to take your job. It's like, okay, and like we still have to live and survive. So I don't know. Yeah, you talked about the media playing a big role in everything, and I'm
I
just like,
agree.
it, it,
I
it,
agree.
it, it's like removing yourself from it helps, but it doesn't help if you still are living under the fear of what was planted into you when you were on it. So it's like being conscious, which is
I
different,
absolutely
but
agree because I think fear takes us out of our bodies, right?
oh,
So when we are calm, we're grounded, right? We're in our bodies, we're feeling, we're able to adjust and adapt because we're paying attention to what's happening around us because we're fully in the moment. But once we get a certain level of fear,
yeah,
we like dissociate a little bit and we
yes,
go to like our most primal kind of like the parts of us. The do I fight it or do I fight it? Right?
yeah,
We go kind of like back to that rudimentary part of us. And when it comes to things like AI, it has gotten people in that very fearful state where they're not able to maybe sit. Like, I think the two of us are probably slightly higher on like optimism scales,
uh-huh.
right? Naturally. And so when we see new things, we're kind of like, oh, cool. You're not immediately thinking, oh, this could kill me, you know?
Yeah. No, I didn't think that until I watched a YouTube video, and then I was like, oh, it could kill me, or it could just accelerate so fast it could just go to outer space and skip Earth out altogether.
Exactly, right? And so like cuz there's some people score really high on this construct called openness. And so
Yeah,
you're really open to new stuff. Something new
yeah,
pops up and you're like, "Oh, I want to try that new restaurant. Oh, I want to try this new option in the restaurant. I want to try this new place. I want to do this. I want to travel here." And some other people are a little bit more cautious. They're slightly lower on openness. So they see a new thing and they're like, nah, I'm gonna stick with what I got. I'm gonna, and we need all types of people for a society to function, right? If we were all looking for newness, we would never be able to build anything because we would just be
Anything,
moving on
yeah.
constantly to the next thing.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to AI, we need both. We need the
Mm,
people like us that are like, yep, let's go forward. And then we need the people that are like, let's let's put a pause on this because there is a large sector of society that might not be able to figure out how to use this new technology and how to integrate it into their lives. And so I think that there has to be some type of answers for people as to like, what do you now do? Okay, so you are like a truck driver, or you work in like a physical job that maybe they want to bring in some type of like AI technology to take over. Because also they're taking over jobs like middle management. They're taking over, they're saying one of the first doctors that are going to be impacted by AI are radiologists. Because
that
they're
makes
saying
sense.
AI is
That's-
reading charts with more accuracy
Yeah.
than
Wow.
even radiologists. So I don't know the answers,
Hmm.
but I do understand people's fear about it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do, but I definitely am leaning into it to help me in my own life. And
That's
it's been
cool.
very helpful.
Yeah, it definitely has. Going back to your spiritual journey, have you always been in therapy? Like, is that a thing?
Yeah, just about forever. I started going to therapy in college,
For
and
like any specific reason or just cause?
transitions aren't easy, moving to another state, being around new people, adjusting to a different life, and just kind of like dealing with just childhood traumas, I guess. Just, kind of typical friends moving, feeling rejected. That was like a big thing for me. I have Chiron in my first house. So
Okay, I've been in the 12th. So first house is identity.
identity and no, it's in my 11th house. Never mind. It's in my house
Oh, okay.
of friends, of friendship, and 11th house.
Oh,
It's where
okay.
my sun sign is too. Um,
Oh,
so it's in
wow.
my 11th house. And so I've always kind of had issues feeling like my friends didn't really like me. And like, oh my God, like, am I one of the people? Like when I was talking about being younger, it's not that I necessarily felt like people didn't like me because I was black. I just felt like they didn't like me. And
What
oh,
planet?
well, let me see. Oh, it's Gemini.
And you're a Gemini.
And I'm a Gemini. So
Interesting.
yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And so I feel like that was one of the things that I talked a lot about was like acceptance, always and kind of like I'm not a people pleaser, but I'm somebody who wants to have fun. And if
Mm,
to have fun means I have to like tell you something you want to hear, I would do it. Back in the day, it was like, I had my own thoughts, but I was like, but I really want to have fun right now and go out with this person. So that was like a big thing for me, kind of like learning to honor my own voice. And so that's
okay.
been something that, kind of on and off my whole life, just going in, checking in, making sure I'm
Check.
good.
That's great. It's cool to hear that like you've been in therapy your whole life, even though you also studied psychiatry, and like it's just cool to see like because I don't know, I've only been in traditional therapy for 2 years, but I used to like go in every week and be like, how are you doing? Like, because you see like 8 clients a day, and I know I'm probably the easiest one, but I'm super messed up. So like, I would be like so concerned because I'm like, dude, if he used to say like, you're my best client because you do the action every week and blah blah blah. I'm like, dude, if I'm your best client, how are you doing? You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's just cool to hear that you committed to your own mental health and your own healing journey as well,
Yeah, because
which
how do you show
probably
up for
makes
people?
you a better therapist
I,
or
I agree
coach and all
because
that.
it's hard. Yeah, because I'm a coach now. But yeah, it's hard to show up for people if you're super chaotic, right?
Yeah.
If you're not feeling well emotionally or physically. Because yeah, my specialty when I was back in like the therapy world was high acuity. So I was working, so that means like more severe psychological trauma, psychological pathology. And so I've had a lot of really dramatic things happen while I'm working with, some of my clients because they were also like, a lot of them are like inpatient. I worked at Men's Central Jail for a period of time. And so I was definitely working with some people that had like a lot of things going on. And, and so, yeah, it can get really stressful if you don't have mechanisms for how do I metabolize and digest stress. And so that became very important for me, and therapy was a big part of that. And then I would also do this thing where I would park my car the furthest away from the building. So as I was leaving, I was like dropping stress from my job, from my day. Every step, I would like leave it
Nice.
on my path. So I would do like a walking meditation to my car every day.
Nice. Wow. So you talk about you were out of your body a lot, you realize though, like
Yeah.
later, like about 15 years ago, because you were very intellectual. It seems like you always responded to what was outside of you too, like, oh, my mom wants me to do this, so I'm gonna do this, or like my friend wants to hear this, so I'll tell him that, or like, you know what I mean?
That's like me, girl.
It sounds like you were really like, yeah, like I guess how you recognize it was out of body, which is interesting. Is there
Yeah.
anything else you can share about being out of your body and
I think because dissociation has been a thing that I have also dealt with at points in my life, just kind of when things get difficult, sometimes you just find yourself just,
how did you
you know,
realize you were dissociated?
my therapist, my
Oh,
therapist,
okay. So
she
you
helped me
had
see it.
somebody told you.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the features, right, of dissociation is you do kind of lose context. You're just kind of like moving through your life and you don't notice that maybe you've actually kind of left it. And so, yeah, my therapist, she would tell me, she'd be like, you stop breathing, right? She's like, you haven't breathed in a very long time. I do that. I will hold my breath for a very,
Yeah.
very, very long time. I'll just constantly breathe out, breathe out, breathe out, breathe out, and I won't breathe in. And
Wow.
so then I can start to feel, I'm like, why am I feeling so anxious? It's like, ma'am,
You
your
are
body
breathing.
is getting no oxygen.
Oh, shoot. So
It
have you
thinks
ever
you're
had
dying.
any physical manifestations of like high anxiety or lack of oxygen or anything like that?
High anxiety, absolutely. I'm a very
Yeah.
anxious person. So,
Okay.
but I might be able to connect some of it to when I was 4, I had a near drowning. I drove my friend's tricycle into the pool
Oh,
under the,
no.
because I thought I could drive on the tarp, the blue
Okay.
tarp. And so I
Oh,
ended
on the pool, right?
on the pool. I was like,
Oh,
this is gonna
no.
be awesome.
Oh, that's so scary.
Yeah. So I ended up going under the tarp, physics, and was then, and I knew how to swim, but I was mad and I felt bad that I had left my friend's tricycle in the pool. So I was trying to get the tricycle out. And I remember thinking about rust. I was like, it's gonna rust. Don't ask me why I knew about rust at that time, but I just knew it was gonna rust. And so I was trying to get it out of the pool. And I think I was just under there a little bit too long. And the one of the kids that was outside with us went inside and like told on me. He thought he was narking, but he like low key saved my life. So I'm like, haha, you hated me. You could let me die, but you didn't. Um, and he went inside and my dad came out and like resuscitated me and we were fine. But my mom put me in hypnosis after that. So
Wait, so let me see if I got that. So you were 5 years old,
yeah,
five,
4 or 5, yeah,
4 or 5. You drove your friend's tricycle into a pool because you thought it was good
badass.
solid ground. You could swim, which is great, but the tricycle couldn't. It sunk to the bottom. And because you were so scared that your friend was gonna be like mad, I guess, that her tricycle was rusting at the bottom of the pool, you decided you needed to save the tricycle and not necessarily yourself first. And so somebody narked on you,
Mhm.
maybe, as at least you thought they did, but really they saved your life.
Yep.
Your dad pulled you out of the pool and he gave you mouth to mouth resuscitation, which is crazy. That means you really went under.
Yeah, it was a little too long. I wasn't like hospital dead, but it was like probably just like a good pat on the back and a little push down to get some water out. But yeah,
Oh gosh.
yeah.
Okay. Is
And I
there
think
more to that?
I think that was kind of my original like trauma, just
Yeah.
the idea. And it kind of makes sense to me when I think about how I hold my breath when I'm stressed.
Oh yeah.
I think it's kind of a moment correlating to that. So I think about it every once in a while. I was meditating on it like maybe about 6 or 7 months ago, and I did see it from a different angle. I saw it from outside of the pool, kind of above it. So I'm not sure if that's originally how I ever saw it, but that's kind of how I see it now.
Oh, okay. So you think that now your anxiety and your holding your breath is actually coming from that trauma of being drowning in the pool,
I think it
basically.
could. I think it could. Because it's kind of been something I think I've always done, kind of,
And
for
and yeah, and you didn't, and when you used to think about it, you were more in it, but now when you meditated on it, you saw it from above.
yeah.
Like,
Because normally when I would think about it, I was like, I would see my dad's foot come into the pool. Like I saw his foot. And so I
so
remember
you see
that.
it in water.
Yeah, I remember I normally see it from in the water, and now I'm seeing it from outside of the water, from above it. And so I don't know what that change is, but I'm assuming it's a good one.
Yeah, I feel like, well, I don't know either, but I feel like it's like now you're, because when you meditate, you actually come out of your body like however long, which can be good and bad, but it's like you're seeing, instead of being in the trauma, you're seeing it from above. It's like you're taking the elevated view, looking down on it,
I love that
which
analogy.
is, yeah, it's almost like you're now seeing it for what it was, like seeing like the bird's eye view of it, and maybe it's losing its power. I was trained in method acting, and we used to. Do you know anything about method acting?
I know that it's very involved. That takes over.
Very
Takes over
dangerous.
your whole life.
Yeah, yeah, it's very dangerous, but it is very fascinating. So, like, we used to have to go back. Like, the theory is, if you go back to this trauma, say you drowning, or for me, like, similar one to me, similar but different, is I was 4 years old, and my mom locked us in a car on a hot day because she went into preschool. But, not like on purpose, it was probably like 5 minutes, but it felt like an hour. And so I started freaking out and being like, Mom. And like, she was on child lock, so we couldn't open the door. And my older sister was in the car, and she left her spare keys in the, like, somewhere in the car. So I took the keys, got in the front seat, put it in neutral, and we were on top of a hill. So we started like flying down this hill, and I turned to my sister and I'm like, get in the back seat. So we get in the back seat, put our seatbelts on. We smashed through a fence. There's like a house right there, but there's a tree first. We hit the tree and we didn't damage the house, thank God. But then we're locked in there till my mom comes out, sees we're in there, has to, for some reason, she can't open the door, I guess because she only had her spare key she left in there, I don't know, but had to call the 911 to jimmy the door out and get us out. And then I didn't realize until, when I was 15, my mom was teaching me how to drive. We were in a parking spot. She was telling me to pull out. I hit a car next to me. When I was 16, I crashed a car. When I was 17, I crashed a car. When I was 18, I crashed a car. When I was 19, I crashed 10 cars in 10 years. And a lot of times, though, it wasn't even my fault. I would just like magnetize cars towards me, and it would total out my car. So it would be like, at a certain point, I was like, dude, why do I keep crashing a car like every year on the year? And I remember like then I was starting to be aware of, I was having thoughts that I'm gonna crash a car, or like I want to crash a car, or like, oh, I'm gonna crash my car right now, or like something. And then finally I went back to that in my acting class, and I was like, oh my God, I'm crashing cars because I crashed the first car I ever got in the front seat of. So I expect to crash a car, so I'm going to crash a car. So, like, isn't that crazy? Whether that's true or not, I believe it to be true.
Yeah.
And so eventually I was like, I'm not driving anymore. Ha! So I was like, I'm Ubering now. Okay, so back to method acting. The theory is you go back to the same trauma 6 or more times. And if you go back 6 times, and it's called sense memory. So you get the sight, smell, taste, touch, feel of the place as much as you can, as sometimes you can't get it all. But you go and you get all those things, and then the 6th or 7th time you go back, it starts to take the power away from that event, so that you can, like, kind of how you said, see it from above. Yeah, so that you can actually see it and use it for, to build the emotion, or to project the character onto the actor or whatever it is, but it doesn't actually grab you and take you off in recreating that same trauma over and over again in your real life. So at least it's supposed to not do, right?
What's interesting about that is what a lot of trauma therapies do, where they'll have reinvestigate the trauma. Depending upon the therapy, there are different ways to do it. Some will have you write it down in great detail, smells, sense, what was your body doing? What were you feeling? What were you hearing? Some will have you meditate on it. Others will have you use like, a device like a light bar. That's EMDR will have you use a light bar while re-experiencing these types of things. And then some therapies will have you kind of like start with a lower trauma that's kind of associated. So it's like you almost, you have an issue with cars. So maybe you don't get in the car and drive it first. Maybe you just sit in it for a period of time and you feel calm while you're sitting in the car, or maybe you just have to stand next to it, and so you can slowly readjust your relationship. But that's really interesting because it is 100% based in because I'm always looking for what's the underlying cause. What's the underlying modality? And what it is that our bodies create pattern and expectation because it wants to know what's happening next, right? Because again, going back to this whole fight or fight it, right? Yeah. If your body doesn't know which one to do, it freezes up a little bit. And it's like, what, can't make a decision. And so it likes to create these really these patterns of like, okay, well, I expect to get in a car and crash, and so that's probably what's going to happen. And so once you break through that, and it's hard to break through, and that's why they're saying like it's like 6 times of like really diving deep into this trauma, understanding it from every possible angle and level that you can, so you can start to reprogram your body and reprogram your brain, because that is possible. And we know that's possible because we're watching method actors do it. We're watching therapists do it. And we're watching people go from maybe a healthy state to having something difficult happen to now they're different. So we know it can happen. People can change. We see it happen in the negative sense. And so it can also happen in the adaptive sense. I don't want to make it negative and positive, but adaptive. Our bodies adapt and they learn from all the things that we experience. And so there are ways to take this horrible, shitty trauma and turn it into something that does hold meaning for us and does actually help us to function better and adapt to our lives in the world.
Yeah, and I think it's all about becoming conscious of it and then noticing when you're thinking the thought of it, because like for example in method acting, I was pulling up my traumas so much at a certain point, I noticed I was actually then living out the same, cycle of trauma over and over again in different ways in my life, which is why I was like, I don't feel like I have actually the tools to even be an actor right now anymore, because I mean, I can use my imagination, right? But some of it is still rooted in like people I know and pulling from experiences, whether I'm imagining them or not. It might be like my sister's in a car crash and I'm gonna recreate that in my mind, but I got to use my sister.
Do they tell you not to do that? Or do they tell you to
They
do
tell you
that?
to do that, but the
Oh.
problem is, I think some people like they call it take the character home. And so I think I had a really hard time coming out of character once I got into characters. I just was like, dude, I'm messing up my like life because I'm like re-triggering my mind to always be in this state. And it was like always my intention to not do that, but I just like couldn't get out of the cycle. So I just wonder, like, when you say it's similar to trauma therapy, hear me out. I wonder if it's a similar thing because, therapy is an industry and people need to make money. So if you're creating a problem to create a problem, so they have to come back to get the problem, recreate it to create the problem again, to come back to get the problem. You know what I'm saying? Like, am I wrong? Come on, tell me.
I think a lot of people think that. Let me defend therapists. I will
Please
say, out
do.
of
Please do.
the thousands upon thousands I know, because I go to conferences all over the country.
I know you do. That's why I'm asking.
I feel like the average therapist that I know really wants people to get better. We always say we want to put ourselves out of business. We don't want people to have to keep coming back. But sometimes it's like maintenance. Like I don't see my therapist every week. I'll see her like once a quarter. I'm like, girl, some crazy shit just went down. Can I holler at you?
Yeah.
And that's kind of like where we want you to be, right? In a place where you have the skills, you learn the tools that you need. And depending upon, because like some people who have really complex trauma might see themselves in therapy for a little longer than somebody who maybe is dealing with like a shorter term trauma, something that they're also more biologically capable of handling, because some people have higher coping just because of the way they were born. They're just born really kind of able to cope with things a little differently. And some people are not born with that skill. And so they have to learn. But the thing that I see that connects to method acting is the focus on don't run from the trauma, see the trauma. The difference is, it seems like with method acting, you don't have a mental health professional to help you bring it back together.
Yeah.
Like I have this whole thing where depending upon how long I'm seeing someone, it's like, I'm not going to break it if I can't fix it. So because you don't have to ask people to dive into their traumas to work on their trauma. So that's also a thing that I think a lot of people don't fully realize, that we don't have to go through every single machination of it in order to help you process it. Some therapies ask for that based on what you've been through. But you don't always have to do it, because if you're just constantly exposing your trauma again and again and again, and you're not learning how to heal it, you're not learning how to process it differently, because that's what's on the other end, right? You experience the trauma through the meditation or through the writing exercises, but then the clinician teaches you how to create meaning, how to retell the story, how to write a new story. So now you're writing the story differently. You're going back and you're talking to your childhood self and you're telling them what they needed to hear that you didn't get to hear.
Yeah.
You're, you're doing cognitive reprocessing work. So there's like a number of different ways that different theories will
Mm.
help you kind of make sense of everything. But I think that's the piece that I see is missing from the acting piece. It's like, well, now how do I tie it up? So now
Yeah.
I put it up and it's
Yeah.
just here, and so that would be the challenge that I would offer. It's like, okay, so now how do I take this version of me off at the end of the day?
Yeah. Well, literally, when you say like this, some people are
Literally,
literally
like,
like,
how do I take it off?
like, but what you say is like, okay, it's one thing to like act like you're taking off a suit. It's another thing to like, here's the like they call it blurts and affirmations, for example. Okay, if this is your trauma and this happened to you, so you think you're always going to crash your car, here's what you got to replace it with. Literally, like, this is how specific you need to get. You need to replace it with, I am a good driver who always has my eyes on the road, or whatever, and so like, what if that's the exact sense memory you want back? You actually need the tools that you're talking about that therapists give to heal it, which we don't obviously do in acting. We just say like, okay, we're done, like, do your ritual to get your character off, but it's not anything that's gonna like elevate your
Yeah.
being to the next level. And so that's where I think I got stuck. So I love that you said that, because that's the only thing missing. At least it was
Yeah.
the only thing
Really
missing
is.
for me. And I've
That's
been looking for that piece. And obviously now I've been working on that piece forever, because that's all I'm doing, is making sure I'm going to the positive of things. And I'm not going into the trauma anymore, thank God. But I've always wondered, am I ever going to be strong enough to do it again, right? And I think it's really what you just said, is like seeing that character and their trauma, or whatever you brought up or created to create that role, as, in specifics, as like pieces, and making sure you have the version of who is really you, or, with the most positive version of you in comparison to that, to then transfer yourself back into.
back to, yeah. You have
Yeah.
to have that eye line of who is me?
Mm.
Who am I? Because what'll happen, the disassociation process, right, takes you out of your body. You're now in this character. You're totally fully embodied this character. And the lines get blurred, right?
Uh-huh.
And it becomes so much more difficult to figure out, like, who's me, who's them, who am I, who is us, and that's why I always I was really down with the whole Sasha Fierce thing.
Mm.
I liked that Beyonce had this different version of her that could show up in different spaces, because it would
Yeah.
almost allow her to protect herself a little bit more. So
Yeah.
Beyonce at home, I don't know this girl, I don't know this woman, but theoretically, the Beyonce at home could still be quiet, and like, maybe she's like more of an introvert, and she wants to be, nice and sweet, but then when she's on stage, she can't be those things. She has to be more, maybe not her character, and so she gets to like put on that skin. And so almost for actors, it's like you get to put on skin to put on skin, right? It's like the version of me that comes to method acting class. It's
Yes.
not the version of me that stays home, you know?
Yeah. No, that's so true. And I think that's why a lot of performers, even actors, change their names, but especially like performers, they always have stage names, but actors change their names. And then I think like it helps to have the character's name too. But I love that you're saying, though, put on
The
the
skin, put on the
alter
skin.
ego. Yeah, put on the skin to put on the skin. Because yeah, you do need that level of separation.
Yeah.
You do.
I think a lot of people don't, if you're not exposed to a lot of folks that work in the industry, you don't understand the pressure. And that's why there is like higher levels of substance use, and because there's a
Yeah.
lot on you. And that's just the work part of it. That's not even the socializing part. The folks that you're around and the work that you have to do to network and to get more deals. And it's in a lot of spaces, clubs, bars, so if you have substance abuse issues, you're kind of constantly being exposed again and again and again to those things. And so it can get really complicated. And what you were saying earlier about like kind of like the like how to kind of like next level and like level up, so you've exposed all this trauma. So there's like a type of therapy, logos therapy,
I've heard of that.
by why Frankl, uh
Yeah, somebody actually
Viktor
told me
Frankl.
about that. When
Yeah,
we did a dialogue demo, they were like, "This reminds me of logos therapy."
it's,
But tell
to
me
me,
about it.
one of my favorites. Viktor Frankl was in a concentration camp and was talking about this moment. He was young. He was obviously really young when he was in there. And I was talking about this moment where they like found an orange. And he was saying everything in the camp was gray. Just everything. Clothes, walls, dirt, everything was gray. And then they had this orange and they didn't want to eat it. They like hid it in this like crevice of a wall so they could like pull it out and like the kids would like sniff it. And I think they eventually had to eat it before it like went bad. But he was saying just seeing this bright colored thing next to all this destruction, all this death, all this misery was so stark. And it helped him to have like hope
Mm.
and optimism. And so I feel like it is a really beautiful therapeutic intervention for creating meaning and being able to extrapolate and kind of take joy even out of things that seem really impossibly difficult. Um, and so I've always liked that intervention because even some of the things you were talking about earlier, like the kind of like the reframe of saying like, oh, I'm actually a great driver. I love cars. They're amazing. Like that's more of the cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Where you're redoing the thoughts, you're retelling yourself like, okay, this is the thought that I have. I don't enjoy where it's going. I don't like what it leads to. So let me rewrite the thought. Let
Mm.
me say it differently so my body will respond differently. My emotions will respond differently. But I like that too. But I really like the idea of connecting this meaning to it. So yeah, look into it.
Uh,
See if it's
that's
what-
great. Yeah, that's really great. It's like finding meaning in anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel like I do a lot of that kind of automatically, but to do it intentionally, especially for things that are super traumatic that maybe I haven't done it before, I think that's really, really cool.
Because you said that earlier too, that I thought was such a good point was awareness, right?
Mm.
Is that a lot of us are walking around with traumas and we're not aware of how they impact us. And so we're just constantly bumping into the same wall again and again and again. And we're like, why does this thing keep happening? And it's because of this unconscious kind of like pattern that you're living. And so the awareness, the ability to be embodied, to sit in the present moment and fully observe it and be like, oh, when this type of person, when this person comes to me and says this particular type of thing, this happens in my body. Maybe there's an issue I need to pay attention to. Let
Yeah,
me think about this. Huh, when was the first time I felt like this? Oh, it was then. I don't like that. Let me change this. So then
yeah,
you might not change it every time, but then as you become more aware of yourself, you're able to sit in the moment of so when you have an opportunity to fix this thing or change or alter this pattern, you can say, huh, now is the time I can change the pattern. And you're able to do
yeah.
it. So yeah, I feel like awareness it's actually the first thing I work on with my coaching clients. It's like how do we learn
Nice.
to be more embodied, more present and more aware so that we can start to rebuild the patterns that we want to rebuild.
That's cool. I love how it's instead of CBT, it's like FBT. It's like feeling behavioral therapy. It's like using instead of the thought, it's like the feeling, right? I love that. And a lot of times, like, yeah, we don't focus enough on the feel. I read this thing on Instagram yesterday. I know this is stupid because it's Instagram, but it was like if you're an overthinker and can't stop thinking, it's because you're an underfeeler. And I
Mm,
was like, yes, I think so.
I don't disagree with that. Because I think that our feelings are very scary because they're very abstract.
Mm.
Right? There's not a lot. There's not always language you can even put on a feeling, and that's why I do like to start with feelings because they are the thing that we are most impacted by. Right? We're very impacted. If you're super angry, you're angry. You might not be able to articulate exactly what's happening to you, but you're punching holes in walls and throwing glasses across the room. It's obvious what's happening. Um, but feelings are beautifully powerful and they're very meaningful.
Yeah.
They tell us things about our environment, right? They tell us things about ourselves, and then they tell our environment things about us. So people in the world can be like, "Oh, she's going crazy. What's going on over there? She's throwing stuff across the room." You know, so it gives everyone information, and I think learning our emotions and learning what causes them, what triggers them, what soothes them is to me kind of like our fundamental purpose on this planet, right? Is like understanding ourselves to an extent to where we can accept who we are while also creating the version of us that we actually want to live in.
Wow, I love that. It's like I accept you as you are while holding you to wanting more for who you are. Or, I accept myself while wanting me to evolve too.
Exactly. Because
I
both
love
can be
that.
true. You don't have to hate yourself because you're not where you want to be. You can love yourself, accept yourself, and also say, and I also want to be better at this.
Right. And on that note too, if you don't love yourself where you're at, you can't actually get to where you want to be.
It's hard
I
because
found
you
that out this
are
year.
mad at yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you're always shaming yourself and then it doesn't work anymore.
And I tell people, you talk to yourself like you would talk to a 5-year-old. So if a 5-year-old did that thing that you just did, would you cuss them out? You better not. Not in
Yeah.
front of me. But you probably wouldn't, right? You would be like, oh, kid, I get it. Oh, it's hard to do that. Like life's not always easy. Oh, let me hug you. And it's like we've got to learn to talk to ourselves that way.
Yeah.
Because life can be difficult enough without beating yourself up.
Facts. Love that.
You're insightful.
So are you. I love talking to you. I'm like, let's have you back and back and back. If you guys like this episode, please give it a like, please subscribe, and we will see you next time. That was Dr. 𝗬𝗲. My name is Megan A. Tully, and this has been Is There More? Thanks for listening.